Dudes, Season 23 gave us some buffs to Stasis subclasses in Revision 0, which I'll now show on screen. Also, frozen enemies now take 10% more damage from special ammo weapons, up from the 5% bonus prior to the update. Not gonna lie, the Shadebinder buff is dookie cheeks and doesn't do much for today's build. Revision 0's on the other hand, does play a big role when I decided to make this video. If you need a good Osmiomantic Glove build that lets you kick back and still put in work, this is for you. It can stun all champions and makes team play much easier. By the way, all footage in the background is 30 light under level in a Master Nightfall. Let's get started. Gameloop first. Start combat by charging a Cold Snap grenade to create a Bleak Watcher turret and throw it into a group of adds. Immediately follow up by throwing a regular Cold Snap into the crowd to regenerate energy and apply freeze. Use Revision 0 to pick off frozen units. Make sure to hit precision shots to build up Hunter's Trace stacks. This whole time you will likely regenerate another grenade charge, so save it for the next group of adds. Use your super and melee when needed, and cast rifts behind cover so you have a safe point. Rinse and repeat. Winter's Wrath is mainly used for crowd control, and while it can do damage via shattering targets, I find that it falls behind. It's good for room lockdown, but not for boss encounters. Healing Rift is my go-to class ability for GMs and raids to provide safety to us and our teammates. If you want to use Empowering Rift, go for it. Penumbral Blast is the only melee we have, and like Winter's Wrath, it is only used to crowd control targets. We will be using Cold Snap Grenade today, as this is an Osmiomantic Glove build. We will have 2 charges due to the exotic perk. This grenade can lock down an entire room with a little help, and can assist in room clear via shatter damage. The aspects for today's build are Ice Flare Bolts and Bleak Watcher. Ice Flare Bolts causes Freezing Seekers to spawn after shattering a frozen target. We will be focusing down frozen targets first anyway, so there will be a lot of use from this aspect. Bleak Watcher allows us to convert our grenades into stasis turrets that fire slowing rounds at enemies. The rounds can eventually freeze targets and help us lock down targets that are out of our line of sight. As for the fragments, I ran Whisper of Durance, Refraction, Rending, and Torment. Durance increases the duration of our slow inflicted on enemies and increases the duration of Bleak Watcher turrets. Refraction grants us Rift energy upon killing slowed or frozen enemies. Rending increases the damage of primary weapons against frozen targets by 50%. Revision 0 makes great use of this against champions and its Hunter Trace rounds. Lastly, Whisper of Torment grants us grenade energy every time we receive an instance of damage with a 1-second cooldown between activations. Each time we receive damage, we get 4% grenade energy, increased to 16.7% when in critical health. Let's cover the Warlock dress. Starting with the helmet, I use Kinetic Siphon, Special Ammo Finder, and Heavy Ammo Finder. One of the ammo finders can be swapped for another Siphon mod if you want. On Osmiomantic Gloves, I slotted Grenade Kickstart, Impact Induction, and Bolstering Detonation. For the dress, I use Sniper Damage Resistance and 2 Variable Resistance mods. With the stockings, I ran Recuperation, Innervation, and Absolution. Finally, on the Bomber, Powerful Attraction, and Reaper. The Shadebinder build doesn't need much resilience unless you like to play closer to the action. I think 70 resilience is more than reasonable. The rest of your stat points should be put into Discipline and Recovery. Discipline will lower our grenade cooldown so we can spawn more Bleak Watcher turrets, and Recovery will decrease our Healing Rift cooldown. If you're looking forward to more Stasis builds this season, consider subscribing. It'll drip you out. Wink wink. Today's build only has 1 weapon loadout. There isn't much to discuss since this build has been made before, and I'm just covering it again for newer players and for those who didn't read the patch notes. I'll still provide alternatives just in case you want to play around a bit. Weapon loadout 1 uses Revision 0, the Eremite, and Apex Predator. Revision 0, as I already mentioned at the start of the video, does 100% bonus damage to champions in both fire modes. It carries intrinsic anti-barrier rounds, so it carries added utility on top of being a long-range monster. Combined with Bleak Watcher and Cold Snap Grenades, we have all bases covered when it comes to champion types without the need for seasonal mods. Anyway, the buff to Revision 0 compounds with Whisper of Rhyme, making it hit like Francis Ngannou on a bad day. Champions will not stand a chance, especially against 4 Hunter's Trace shots if you can land them, which I can't. The role I like to use on my Revision 0 is Corkscrew Rifling, Ricochet Rounds, Vulnerable Weapon, 4th times a Charm, and Composite Stock. The firing mode is up to preference. If you don't like this beauty of a gun, try out Outbreak Perfected or Wish Ender. The Eremite will be your special ammo boss DPS weapon. I have fallen in love with this weapon. It hits hard, and once you get used to the charge rate, it doesn't feel clunky at all. The role I'm using today is Arrowhead Break, Accelerated Coils, Envious Assassin, and Controlled Burst with a Charge Time Masterwork. Envious Assassin allows us to overflow the mag when we kill enemies with other weapons, reducing the amount of time we need to reload. Controlled Burst increases DPS by increasing damage and reducing the charge time if we hit every bolt in a burst. It's a solid role that works in all content and scales very well. If you want to collect orbs from a distance, you can swap this out for a Path of Least Resistance with Shoot to Loot and Volt Shot. Apex Predator is our big chunk DPS. I won't really go into it, but the best role is Quick Launch, Impact Casing, Reconstruction, and Bait and Switch. Use enhanced perks if you have the resources. As for your new players, consider picking up a good Hothead role. If you want to use Path of Least Resistance as I mentioned, you can use a role with Demolitionist and Explosive Light. Alright everyone, that is the quickest and dirtiest Stasis Warlock build I'll ever make. I hope you guys enjoyed it and make use of it later on since this is a tried and true classic. I'll be making a build for Hunters next. As always, thank you for watching and happy farming.